Snowflakes drifted lazily from the night sky, melting as they touched Emily's cheeks. The air was so cold it seemed to pierce straight through her thin clothes. She pulled her faded coat tighter around her small frame, though the fabric was worn and the zipper stuck halfway. Her shoes, scuffed and splitting at the seams, crunched over the frozen pavement as she hurried along the dimly lit street. It had been another long shift at the diner. The tips had been meager, barely enough to cover a few groceries for the week, but she told herself it was better than nothing. Her breath formed soft white clouds in front of her as the wind cut past, stinging her ears. She tucked her chin down, hoping to reach her small basement apartment before the cold seeped any deeper into her bones. The street was unusually quiet. Shops had closed hours ago, their windows dark, the last of the holiday lights twinkling faintly in the distance. Emily passed an empty bus stop, her mind already on the cup of tea she'd make once she was home. She was tired, hungry, and more than ready to put the day behind her. But despite her exhaustion, there was a softness in her eyes, a quiet resilience born from years of struggle. She had learned that the world could be harsh, but moments of unexpected goodness could appear anywhere. She just didn't know that one of those moments was waiting for her only a few steps ahead. Emily slowed her pace as she caught sight of something unusual near the bus stop ahead. Under the faint yellow glow of the street lamp, a small figure huddled on the icy bench. As she drew closer, the shape became clearer, a boy, no older than 7, sitting alone with his knees pulled tightly to his chest. His thin shirt clung to him, offering no warmth against the biting wind. Snow clung to his messy brown hair, and his small hands trembled as he gripped a worn stuffed bear. His cheeks were red from the cold, but his lips had turned a pale shade of blue. Emily's heart tightened. She glanced up and down the street. No one else was around. The night seemed to stretch on in silence, except for the faint sound of the boy's quiet sniffles. Kneeling down beside him, she spoke softly, careful not to startle him. "Hey, sweetheart, are you lost?" Her voice was warm, the kind that made strangers feel safe. The boy looked up, his eyes wide and glassy with tears, and gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Emily's mind raced. Where were his parents? How long had he been sitting there? She could see he was shivering violently, his small frame nearly rattling from the cold. Without thinking, she shifted closer, instinctively trying to shield him from the wind. "It's okay," she murmured. "I'm here now." And in that moment, she knew she couldn't just walk away, not when someone so small and fragile needed her. Emily didn't hesitate. She slipped her arms from her own coat, the only barrier she had against the icy air, and gently wrapped it around the boy's trembling shoulders. The warmth she'd been clinging to all evening left her instantly, replaced by a sharp chill that bit into her skin, but she barely noticed. What mattered was the way his shivering eased as the heavy fabric settled over him. The boy looked up at her, eyes still wet, as if he couldn't quite understand why a stranger would do this. Emily smiled softly, brushing a few flakes of snow from his hair. "This will keep you warm until we find your family," she said, her voice steady despite the cold sinking into her bones. She took out her phone, her fingers stiff and clumsy, and called the police to report a lost child. While they waited, she stayed close, shielding him as best she could from the wind. He leaned against her, his tiny hands clutching her coat tightly, as though afraid it might vanish. Every few minutes, Emily spoke to him in a calm, reassuring tone, asking about his stuffed bear, telling him it was brave to wait here until help came. Time seemed to slow. The snow fell harder, covering the pavement in a thin, white blanket. When the distant wail of a siren finally reached them, relief washed over Emily. She didn't know what the night would bring next, but she knew one thing: she wouldn't let go of him until he was safe. The police car rolled to a stop, its headlights cutting through the swirling snow. Emily rose to her feet, still keeping one arm around the boy. The rear door swung open and a tall man stepped out, moving quickly toward them. His face was pale with fear, eyes scanning wildly until they landed on the child. "Ethan," the man called, his voice cracking. The boy's head snapped up, and in an instant he broke free from Emily's side, running into the man's arms. The man dropped to his knees, pulling the boy close, holding him as though he might disappear if he let go. Emily stood back, shivering without her coat, watching the reunion in silence. The man's expensive wool overcoat and polished shoes seemed almost out of place in this frozen street. When he finally looked up at her, something shifted in his expression, relief giving way to disbelief. "You gave him your coat?" he asked, his voice low but filled with emotion. Emily nodded, unsure what else to say. "He was freezing," she murmured. The man rose to his full height, still holding Ethan's small hand. "Do you know who I am?" he asked gently. Emily shook her head. He offered a faint, almost incredulous smile. "Daniel Carter," he said. The name stirred a faint memory. She'd seen it in headlines, attached to stories of grand donations and business triumphs. But in this moment, Daniel Carter wasn't a millionaire or a public figure. He was just a father, and Emily had helped bring his son safely back to him. The next morning, Emily was still wrapped in a blanket on her couch, trying to chase away the chill from the night before, when a knock echoed through her small apartment. She hesitated, then opened the door to find Daniel Carter standing there, his presence almost too large for the narrow hallway. In his hands, he held a neatly folded, brand-new winter coat and a plain white envelope. "I wanted to thank you properly," he said, his tone warm but sincere. "Most people would have walked past. You didn't." He handed her the coat first. It was thick, soft, and far better than anything she'd owned in years. Then, with a small nod, he offered the envelope. Inside was more money than she'd ever seen in her life, enough to pay her debts, fix her apartment's heating, and start over. Tucked in with the bills was a letter offering her a job at his charitable foundation, helping families in need. Emily's throat tightened, words caught somewhere between gratitude and disbelief. "I didn't do it for a reward," she finally managed. Daniel's smile deepened. "That's exactly why you deserve it." The morning light spilled into the hallway, glinting off the fresh snow outside. Emily clutched the coat to her chest, a mix of warmth and hope swelling inside her. The night before, she'd given away the only protection she had from the cold. Today, she realized she had received something far greater, a chance to change her life, and to keep spreading the same kindness that had brought her here.